Well, we've got some earnings that have come out again here. Qualcomm shares, they're falling this morning after the chip maker posted fourth quarter earnings that were in line with estimates, but issued disappointing outlooks as weak smartphone demand that's hitting its chip business. We're taking a look at shares down by about 7.6%. Let's bring in Yahoo Finance's own Dan Howley with more on this. Dan, what stuck out to you from the report?
Yeah, I mean, look, they missed on adjusted EPS. They kind of met on revenue as far as expectations go, but really it was what's happening in the next quarter that's standing out, and I think that's why we're seeing shares falling. They said that they're expecting EPS of between $2.25 and $2.45. Wall Street was looking for $3.40. Adjusted revenue, they're seeing $11.34 billion. The expectation was for $11.5 billion, so not terrible, but the real issue is the smartphone sales. As you said, we had Cristiano Amon, the CEO, saying that they expect low double-digit decline in smartphone sales. That's up from mid-single-digit decline that they had previously projected. They said they've implemented a hiring freeze and they're planning additional spending reductions in their mature areas. And they said that they're continuing to evaluate additional actions and are prepared and committed to making further reductions to operating expenses as needed. Now, he did point out that this is not part of, not an issue with the business. This is part of the broader macroeconomic conditions that we're seeing. But, you know, it does speak to how we're seeing smartphone sales kind of decline, similar to what we saw with PC sales. Although the difference being that PC sales are down because everybody bought a PC during the pandemic. Smartphone sales, 2 years you're going to buy a new smartphone, but it's a luxury item. If you have a phone that's 5 years old and it still works, there's no reason to get a new one if you can't afford it right now, or if you're worried, unless you're me and you're bougie. But yeah, I think that's something that we're seeing. And you saw it in Apple with the strength of the iPhone sales, right? They missed expectations slightly, but still, that's a big deal coming from Apple and the iPhone. So we're going to continue to see this. And, it's not just Qualcomm, obviously, AMD warning about the future. That's on the PC side, Intel ditto, and we'll have to see what NVIDIA says when they release their earnings. But, it just seems like this whole market, which was just going wild during the pandemic, especially as we saw, processors and chips being kind of delayed. Now they have too much inventory. They're trying to work through that, and not as many people want to actually buy.
I do think you have to ding Qualcomm here. They could have done a better job telegraphing this. They've been out there a lot the past couple months, just giving some clue. I mean, this is a major shift in tone from this management team. But Dan, you mentioned Apple. That is perhaps the bright spot here, because they will still be making chips for the iPhone, I believe, next year?
Right, yeah. So that's one of the big things. Obviously we were talking about previously that Apple wanted to go out on its own, but that's not going to be the case here for some time. I think, that is obviously a huge standout for them. Qualcomm relies so heavily on the smartphone industry, but they are trying to move away from just that. Obviously, their automotive business didn't perform as well this quarter, but they're trying to build out there. Outperformed this quarter versus expectations. And they're trying to build more into the PC space, where you actually use a Qualcomm chip in a computer. Microsoft just released a new Surface product that runs on a Qualcomm chip, full Windows. So, they're trying to get past just the smartphone stage, though that's clearly their breadwinner, and it's going to be for a while. We're still going to be using smartphones. I don't care what Mark Zuckerberg says about face computers, but maybe at some point in, a couple of decades. But for now, it really is going to continue to be their breadwinner. And I think smartphones, they obviously will come back. It's just this macroeconomic issue that we're dealing with now.
Yeah, to your point, automotive, I think in this most recent quarter was something like 3% of sales overall. It's still relatively small.
Right.
So it's something that they really are going to have to beef up in order to compete with the handset revenue. It's interesting, the Apple news, right? Because it's just like a stay of execution. It's not like, so it sounds like that it's not going to happen in 2023, but it is still going to happen eventually.
Right.
What I've been surprised about is that Apple has been a little bit slower to develop its own modem chips for its phones. It's had some setbacks reportedly with doing that, and that's why it still has to rely on Qualcomm. Yeah,
and I think, look, there's a history with Apple and connectivity. There was the whole "you're holding it wrong," iPhone debacle that had happened, and look, they're
what about that?
Yeah, I did not. It is something, it's their Halo product. They cannot afford any issues there. So if they have something that works and they're trying to work on something that doesn't work yet, then obviously they're going to have to stick with, Qualcomm going forward. But they want to ditch them. They want to be self-sufficient in the chip space. They've already proved that they can do that and then some when it comes to replacing Intel. I mean, they're, blowing them away as far as battery life goes. They're putting those chips into their iPad. So, they can do this. It's just a matter of time, I think. And this is a different type of chip. And you have to make sure that, especially with a radio chip, that the battery life isn't impacted. And if you have an iPhone, you know that the battery life, look, you're going to buy a smartphone. It's battery, screen, and camera. And if you screw up one of those, then you can kiss a lot of customers goodbye. Right. So that's, I think, the reason why they're sticking with them. But as you said, this is not something where they're going, you know what, we're going to hang out with Qualcomm a lot longer. It really is just a stay of execution.
Right, which I guess it tells you why the shares are not getting any kind of, floor from that.
It's happening.
Yeah. Thanks, Dan. Appreciate it.